There is a reason. You go with that one. I'm curious why.
One of the images that first was sent to me was of an Australian character who had a mullet, and that Neil sent to me. And it included the shorts and the mullet, and I just loved it. And weirdly, I'd forgotten, but my wife reminded me when she saw the film that the very first job I did, I had a mullet where she met me, so it was kind of great for me. You know, it was a nice throwback to 20 years ago. But it just seemed to fit who he is. You know, he's one of those guys who thinks he's the coolest. He thinks that everyone at the office likes him, who thinks that he's got it all together and doesn't realise that from the haircut to the shorts to the way he acts, that no one really likes him, but he really thinks he's the man, you know? And the mullet just seemed perfect.
It's also little things he does, like when he goes into the bathroom and he's looking at himself in the mirror. I don't know if you saw over to his right side, he's got he's basically just taken over the bathroom. So it says Vincent's stuff, and then it's got all of what he wants in the bathroom, like multiple pressed shirts and like deodorants and stuff.
Yeah.
It's just his.
I nicked that from someone I know. Well, I'm obviously not going to mention, but he literally had at his desk. He just had to change his shirt all the time. Just felt great putting on a new shirt. It's exactly the same shirt. It just felt like ready to go, and with a new polo shirt. So we had shirts everywhere and protein powders. He just
Awesome character.
Yeah, I love playing. I loved it.
Just to answer my question. Well, I think every science fiction film I've done is, they're pretty distinctive in terms of their world. And what I love about Neil's films, all three of them that I've seen, is that, you know, sometimes people think of sci-fi as sort of film light. And Neil's films always have such an underpinning of something that's actually very important for us all to discuss and to think about. And so we had a riotous good time making the movie. It was so happy, and it was so exciting for me to work in South Africa with such an international crew, to work with you and Charlton and Neil. But I also felt that the movie has so much to say to us in terms of what is it to be human, and in a sense, that word human is a hard word to define now, because there's so many inhumane acts in the film perpetrated by humans, not perpetrated by robots. So I just love how he has this cauldron going of all these very important issues underneath a very entertaining movie.
I have a question for Neil. A lot of these themes that you touched in the movie are touched upon in Japanese anime, and I was wondering how much of an influence that might have been.
Almost very very little of an influence. I think when I was in my early 20s, I was quite into Japanese animation, but a lot of it was. It's like the same thing that I end up always saying, which is like imagery based stuff is the thing that really gets me. And Masamune Shiero's imagery was a huge deal to me when I was sort of like 20. So I have all of the stuff that he's done, and I like the books that are like collections of stuff like Intron Depot and Bullets and that kind of work. But I didn't read enough of it or see enough of it, I think, to get into the concepts of man-machine stuff and discussions about consciousness and sentience enough. I mean, the most I saw was like Ghost in the Shell, and I haven't even really seen the standalone complex. But in terms of imagery, like the ears were from Barrios, from Appleseed. You know, I like the imagery. But strangely, as I've gotten older, my interest in it has sort of waned. I think basically what's happened to me is I just have become more interested in day-to-day, everyday stuff. You know, like news is almost more interesting to me than other people's fiction, if that makes sense. But other people's fiction in terms of design is still incredibly interesting to me. So it's a weird answer, but there's no direct parallel between the two.
My name is Lapakazo, and I do have a question, but I want to offer a compliment first. Your body language was so beautiful that there were moments when I left the theater because it was breaking my heart to watch. And this morning, some of the imagery, when you were when you were scorched down, it just really touched me. So exquisite body language, and thank you for it.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. And thank you for making the maker brown.
Never thought of that before.
Yes,
Mr.
brown
Cattell,
maker.
yeah.
Was the issue of diversity, which I also appreciated, the languages, the different dialects, accents, excuse me. I really appreciate that. Was that deliberate, or is this just how you think?
I think it's more just how I think. I think coming from SA, I moved to Canada at a weird age as well, and I think I became aware of the fact that I had grown up in a place where there's so much of a sort of powder keg situation with race in South Africa, and also so many different issues around race that it's impossible to escape as a kid. And then I think by moving to Canada, it kind of amplified it. It wasn't like going to a country that's predominantly white and so you forget about it. It's like you can turn back and look at it with fresh eyes. And so I think race to me is just something that's really on my mind a lot. And I think as a subconscious byproduct, it works its way into everything. I think a lot of the inspirations for me are very instinctual and subconscious. I don't over intellectualize stuff much. It's a very instinctual thing. And in terms of Dev, he's one of those people where when his name came up for that role, it was like a case of that it couldn't be anyone else. It's kind of cool when that happens. It's sort of like, it's what happened with these two as well, but I haven't really had that on a movie before where it's just like you hear a name or you think of a name and then it just sticks. And it's like you cannot not be that person. And so Dev, I didn't write that with him in mind, but it's like the second you hear it, it's like it has to be him. And I'm sure there's some subconscious computation happening that just makes that work in my head. So, yeah.
Is this thing on? I have a two-part question. One, who would win in a fight, Chappie or the robot from Interstellar?
TARS.
That's a very interesting question. Well, his super unique morphology as well. He could do, I don't know, man, that TARS thing is up to no good.
So I guess a more real question is, so in Chappie, there's you deal with just robots and them having consciousness, and I think a lot of robot films are more like humanity versus robots. Was your choice all along to be this consciousness tale of robots enriching and enhancing human lives, or just did it happen on the way as you were writing the film? Like, oh, I can go in this direction.
No, it didn't happen on the way. I mean, I guess it's part of a bigger thought process. Like the bigger thought process would be that you can take the matter on the planet, right? You can take a bunch of carbon and you can reconfigure it into anything you want if you had the power to do that. So the fact that natural selection and evolution crafted essentially carbon and water into a mechanism that can think and be conscious means there's nothing in physics that says that you cannot do that to a greater degree. You could build a brain the size of this room, theoretically, right? You could also build a silicon-based life form, and it could be sentient. Like there's no limit to the height that you can reach in terms of design once we figure out how to design things, theoretically, right? And then this gets into like God versus, spiritual versus sort of techno discussions about what's possible. So Chappie is essentially, if it takes several billion years to develop the building blocks which you need, like RNA and DNA, and then those can build multicellular life, and then multicellular life can be honed with natural selection to a point where it becomes sentient like us, then at some point that sentient being can begin to manipulate the matter around it to build better sentient life, right? Which is like maybe where we're starting to arrive now in the 21st century. So who's to say that when we build that there's a lot of evidence in evolutionary sciences that show that altruism and acting in ways that are empathetic to others are actually beneficial on an evolutionary basis. So this whole notion of like that the robot has to declare nuclear war is one part of the discussion, but it's like, it may not be reality. The reality is maybe it can empathize like to a far greater degree than we can, and experiences like a way wider range of emotions. So why not have a robot that can do that? And I think that if you left Chappie for 20 years, you would be in a place that's like sort of unfathomable for humans. So that was the genesis, it was that.
I think it goes back to what he was saying before about, there's both sides of the coin. Anyway, I hate to hog the mic for so long, but Wolverine is in the room, and Spider-Man just went back to Marvel. Would Wolverine also want to possibly go back to Marvel with the X-Men for Disney?
Wow.
Sorry to get away from the movie. No, this is not.
There's a non-sequitur. There's so many forces at play there, man, beyond what anyone would want. But the thing I've always loved about the comic book world is how the fun thing was how a writer of a comic book could just pull all these characters together. And what became a Friday night discussion of, it'd be cool to see Batman fight Wolverine, bang, Monday morning they're working on it, But that's an idealized world.
What about Christian Bale's Batman versus Wolverine?
As in,
like,
yeah.
well, I suppose like without some of his technology, you would just cut him up.
Yeah, but it would be if it was
in the Tumblr.
He's Batman.
If he was
Yeah. If he was in the Tumblr,
we could try and stretch the movie out beyond a short, but I'm guessing it'd be a short.
What if Chappie just comes in and kicks everybody's ass? That robot from Interstellar, Wolverine, Batman, Superman gives you all a high.
Let's not forget we've got the ultimate ass kicker here to my right.
Oh!
What about Chappie versus Wolverine? I want to hear you guys.
he would.
Yeah.
They're good friends, actually.
They probably would like it.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Probably fight on the same team.
Apparently, I'm here to take the fun level back down. Following up on what you were saying before, in a somewhat less abstract way, I mean, the issue of humans versus robots. I mean, some of this is very, very real and very near term. I mean, the idea of having autonomous battlefield robots, the idea that you can actually program a code of conduct and morality and things into robots. It's something that you were kind of trending that way, that maybe having more automation in policing or even on the battlefield might not be such a bad thing. I'm wondering if that is in fact what you think.
Well, there was a really interesting thing that I noticed with the script that is just culturally very interesting, which is that when I gave the script to the financiers, they viewed the idea of autonomous robots in South Africa as a completely satirical idea. That it was like, obviously I'm poking fun at it, right? The irony is that if you take that idea to South Africa, you probably have like 96% of the population agree that it was a good idea, right? So they cannot be corrupted. You can't like bargain with them when you get pulled over. You can't give them a couple of rand to like not get a speeding ticket. So there is the weird South Africa North America discussion, which kind of muddies the water a little bit and makes it less clear. But generally speaking, I mean, it's a very hard thing to wrap your head around, that a drone operator in Nevada can be, releasing munitions like in the Middle East. And some of that is the moose in the film with Vincent. Some of that worked its way in there. But I don't think that it's a case in this movie of addressing that topic so much as it's more a case of look at the atrocities that humans do to one another, and look how you can have this blank slate robot that is probably going to be capable of being more human than the humans around them. That was really what was interesting to me. So I was touching on the idea of the autonomous militaristic or autonomous law enforcement idea, but it wasn't the primary driving force.
We have one last